On February 28, 2026, the world changed. Not gradually, not with warning. In a matter of hours, the most strategically critical waterway on the planet, a narrow strip of water 21 miles wide at its tightest point, was effectively shut down. 20% of the world's seaborne oil supply gone. 12 to 15 million barrels a day stranded. The International Energy Agency called it the greatest global energy security challenge in history, and it was only day one. 40 days later, a ceasefire was announced. Both Washington and Tehran immediately declared victory. But here's the question that no one in either capital wants to answer honestly. Who actually won? And more importantly, what does the answer tell us about the new rules of power in the 21st century? The Strait of Hormuz is not just a shipping lane. It is a pressure valve for global civilization. Before February 28th, roughly a quarter of the world's seaborne oil and a fifth of its liquefied natural gas passed through that 21-mile gap every single day. The Gulf states depend on it for their exports. Asian economies, China, India, Japan, South Korea, depend on it for their energy imports. And because energy underlies everything, food, transportation, manufacturing, disrupting the strait doesn't just raise oil prices. It begins to unravel the entire logistical architecture of the modern economy. Iran understood this. It has understood it for decades. And on March 4th, 2026, it pulled the trigger. On February 28th, the United States and Israel launched Operation Epic Fury, coordinated airstrikes on Iranian military facilities, nuclear sites, and leadership infrastructure. And a supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, was killed in the opening hours. Within days, Iran's Interim Leadership Council declared the strait closed. Not threatened, closed. Brent crude surged past $120 a barrel. Iran launched 21 confirmed attacks on merchant vessels. It laid sea mines. It struck tankers, Gulf ports, and desalination plants. The Philippines declared a national energy emergency. Across Gulf Cooperation Council states, 70% of food imports were disrupted. And analysts at Bloomberg were gaming out scenarios where oil reached $200 a barrel if the closure persisted into the second quarter. This is the context in which Trump issued his ultimatum on April 7th. He set a deadline of 8 p.m. Eastern Time. He threatened to bomb Iran, in his own words, into the Stone Ages. He said a whole civilization would die that night, never to return. Less than 2 hours before that deadline, Pakistan brokered a ceasefire. Oil prices immediately collapsed more than 16% in a single day, their largest one-day drop since the pandemic. Both sides declared victory. So let's do what neither side wants to do, and actually examine those claims against the facts. The American case rests on three pillars. First, the strait is technically reopening. Iran agreed to allow safe passage as a condition of the deal. Second, Trump forced Iran to the negotiating table after Tehran had publicly sworn it would never negotiate under military pressure. Third, Khamenei is dead. The man who ran the Islamic Republic for 34 years, and the architect of its regional strategy, eliminated in the opening hours. For the hawks in Washington, for the Israeli government, for the Gulf states that have lived under the shadow of Iranian missile capability for years. This represents a genuine shift in the regional balance of power. But here's what the American narrative carefully avoids. Trump described Iran's 10-point peace proposal as a workable basis on which to negotiate. That plan, as published by Iranian state media, contains a provision that should have caused immediate alarm. Explicit recognition of Iranian smart management of the Strait of Hormuz, which the IRGC interpreted as American acceptance of Iranian control over the world's most critical maritime chokepoint. Trump also floated a joint venture in which the U.S. and Iran would jointly charge tolls for ships to pass. Iran was reportedly planning to demand those tolls in cryptocurrency. Read that again slowly. The United States, the country that has defended freedom of navigation as a core principle of its foreign policy for over 200 years, is now apparently open to a framework in which the Islamic Republic of Iran has a formalized role in controlling access to the waterway through which the entire global economy breathes. CNN's Fareed Zakaria said conceding even temporary control of the strait to Tehran was handing Iran a weapon far more usable than nuclear weapons. Republican hawks, figures not easily alarmed by military escalation, were openly alarmed. This is the Iranian case for victory, and it is considerably stronger than the American press has acknowledged. Iran entered this conflict with 40% inflation, a depreciating currency, massive internal unrest, and a supreme leader who became the first casualty of the campaign. It lost senior IRGC commanders. It absorbed the largest American military strike since Iraq in 2003. Its economy will contract by an estimated 10%. By any conventional military metric, Iran lost badly. And yet, Iran walked into ceasefire negotiations having demonstrated something that no amount of military defeat can erase: the ability to impose catastrophic economic costs on the entire world without firing a single missile at American soil. The strait closure was, by every measure, the largest oil supply disruption in recorded history, surpassing the 1973 Arab oil embargo. The IEA said so directly. Iran achieved this with a navy objectively inferior to the U.S. Fifth Fleet, with forces degraded by repeated Israeli strikes, in the middle of an active military campaign designed to destroy its capacity to fight. That is not a military failure. That is a strategic achievement of the first order. Which brings us to the question the 2-week negotiating window in Islamabad will have to confront whether the parties want to or not. The ceasefire is already cracking. Iran halted tanker traffic again within hours of the announcement after Israel struck Lebanon, citing a ceasefire violation. The White House said Lebanon was not covered by the deal. Iran said it was. This is not a procedural disagreement. This is a fundamental divergence about what the ceasefire actually means. And it reveals the structural problem at the heart of every attempt to resolve this conflict. The issues that caused this war have not been resolved. Iran's nuclear program remains. Uranium enrichment continues. The question of inspections has not been answered. The question of sanctions relief, what Washington is prepared to offer, and whether any offer can be trusted given America's history of walking away from nuclear deals, has not been answered. Lebanon, Hezbollah, the broader regional architecture Iran has built over 40 years, none of it has been touched. And beneath all of this, the strait itself remains contested. Iran is claiming control. The U.S. is claiming freedom of navigation. These two positions are not compatible. Someone will have to give ground in Islamabad. And the pressure on both sides to avoid being seen as the one who blinked is enormous. So who won the ceasefire? The honest answer is that the question is a trap. Wars fought not just with missiles and aircraft carriers, but with oil prices, insurance premiums, and food supply chains do not have clean victors. They have parties who manage their vulnerabilities better, and parties who created new leverage they didn't have before. By that measure, Iran enters the negotiations holding a card it has never held: the demonstrated operational ability to close the strait and survive long enough to force a superpower to the table. That card doesn't disappear when the ceasefire holds. It becomes more valuable the longer Tehran can credibly threaten to play it again. Washington eliminated a supreme leader and degraded an adversary's military infrastructure. But it also revealed something uncomfortable: that you can destroy a country's leadership and still not destroy its strategic leverage. That a nation with sea mines, drones, and 21 miles of coastline can impose costs on the global economy that dwarf what any military victory is worth. The next 2 weeks will not resolve this. What they will do is tell us whether anyone in either capital understands what has actually just happened. Because the Strait of Hormuz will not stop being 21 miles wide, and the world will not stop running on what flows through it. The question is not who won. The question is whether anyone has learned anything at all.